The shack everyone laughed at. When I bought the shack on Lake Mallory, people thought I'd lost my mind. The listing was a joke, $5 for structure. Land not included. It had been sitting there for months, leaning to one side, with broken windows and raccoon squatters. The Homeowners Association, known around here as the HOA from hell, had already voted to demolish it. But I saw something no one else did. The property sat at the very edge of the lake, right where the old boundaries of the HOA ended. Technically, it wasn't on their land. The paperwork was messy, tax maps from the 1960s overlapped, and the old owner had never transferred the deed properly. I did my homework, combed through courthouse records, and realized something huge. The lakefront parcel was unclaimed. Whoever bought the shack could file to own the land beneath it. So, I handed over a crisp $5 bill and signed a purchase agreement that looked like it had been typed on a 1980s printer. The seller laughed. The HOA president, Marjorie Crane, laughed even harder. "Sure," she said, standing in her pressed white suit, sunglasses glinting. "Enjoy your raccoons." The first few weeks were miserable. I slept on a cot surrounded by mold and rot, using a flashlight because the power lines had been cut years ago. Every morning, HOA members would drive by in their golf carts, pointing and whispering. They didn't realize I was filing paperwork, slow, tedious legal paperwork that would change everything. 6 months later, I received a letter from the county clerk confirming my ownership of the entire shoreline lot, 1.7 acres of lakefront property. I had done it legally, cleanly, and completely. The HOA's laughter stopped the moment they realized what I had. That summer, developers began circling. A tech billionaire wanted to buy into the lake community, and suddenly my $5 shack was sitting on the most valuable piece of land in the area. Offers started at $500,000. I refused. That's when the HOA got nasty. They started issuing violation notices for things like unauthorized paint color, unsanctioned renovation, and failure to maintain community standards, even though my property wasn't technically within their jurisdiction. They blocked construction trucks, cut off my driveway access, and filed a boundary dispute claim with the county. I thought it was harassment. I didn't realize it was part of a bigger plan, a plan to take my land entirely. And the moment I saw the secret map Marjorie was hiding in her office, I realized just how far they were willing to go. The secret map and the HOA's hidden agenda. The morning I found the map, I wasn't even looking for it. I had gone to the HOA's office to file yet another complaint, this time about the construction barricade they had placed across my private driveway. Marjorie, as usual, met me with her sharp smile and fake charm. "Mr. Parker," she said sweetly, "you really should just sell that little shack. It's not fit for living, and you're making our community look unrefined." Her words were coated in sugar, but her eyes were knives. When she left the office to fetch some forms, I noticed a large, old document rolled up on her desk. It was labeled Mallory Shore's redevelopment plan, confidential. My curiosity got the better of me. I unrolled it just enough to see what was inside, and that's when my stomach dropped. The map showed a proposed resort complex, condos, a marina, even a private golf course. And right at the center of it all was my parcel of land, shaded in bright red, labeled Phase 1 Acquisition, Pending Transfer. Pending transfer? To whom? Before I could take a photo, I heard her heels clicking down the hallway. I barely rolled the map back up before she entered. "Everything okay, Mr. Parker?" she asked, her voice suddenly cooler. "Just fine," I said, forcing a smile. But my hands were trembling. That night, I sat by the lake, the wind whispering through the reeds, and pieced it all together. The HOA wasn't just harassing me for fun. They were working with a developer to turn Lake Mallory into a luxury resort, and my $5 shack sat on the only piece of land they didn't control. If they could force me out or invalidate my ownership, they'd have their golden ticket. The next week, the attacks escalated. Someone slashed my tires. A notice of condemnation appeared on my door, claiming my home was unsafe for habitation. Then, one morning, I woke to the sound of an excavator idling nearby. The HOA had hired a crew to remove debris. They were about to tear down my house. I ran outside, waving the deed papers I'd fought so hard for. "Touch that house, and I'll sue every one of you," I shouted. The foreman shrugged. "Talk to the HOA, buddy. They said it's their property." That night, I made copies of every document I had, deeds, tax records, survey maps, and drove 2 towns over to store them in a safe deposit box. Something told me the fight was only beginning. Because if the HOA was willing to falsify maps and hire demolition crews, what would they do next to get $5 million worth of lakefront land? They tried to erase me. The first sign something was wrong came when I opened my mailbox and found a foreclosure notice for a loan I had never taken out. According to the letter, Parker Lake Holdings LLC had defaulted on a $750,000 line of credit secured by the property at 14 Mallory Shore Lane, my address. Except I had never heard of Parker Lake Holdings. The ink was fresh, and the signature looked suspiciously like mine, only shakier. They weren't just trying to steal my house. They were trying to erase me on paper. I called the county recorder's office, furious. The clerk hesitated before speaking. Sir, according to our system, ownership transferred 2 weeks ago. The deed was filed electronically. I felt my blood run cold. Someone had forged a deed transfer using my property's record. They'd even used an old notary stamp from a defunct firm. When I stormed into the HOA office demanding answers, Marjorie didn't even flinch. She just smiled that same tight smile. "Oh, Mr. Parker," she said, "these are complex matters. Perhaps you should let professionals handle them." That's when I realized she wasn't bluffing. The HOA had powerful friends, surveyors, county clerks, developers, all working together. I wasn't fighting a neighborhood association anymore. I was fighting a machine. The next few weeks were chaos. My mail disappeared. My name vanished from the community's online directory. Neighbors stopped waving. One even told me, "We heard you moved away." Moved away. They were rewriting my existence, document by document. I hired a lawyer, a young real estate attorney named Dana Lee, who had a reputation for shredding fraudulent claims. She worked late into the night, pulling every land record she could find. After 3 days, she called me, voice trembling. "Your property ID number has been altered," she said. "Someone duplicated it, reassigned it to a dummy LLC, and changed your tax status to inactive. It looks like an inside job." We filed an injunction immediately. The county froze all property transfers pending investigation. But the HOA didn't slow down. The next morning, a notice appeared on my door. Unauthorized occupancy. Vacate immediately. That night, I heard footsteps outside, slow, deliberate. My lights flickered, then went dark. I stepped outside with a flashlight and caught sight of 2 figures near the waterline, unspooling something into the lake. Cables? When I called out, they ran. The next morning, I found the evidence, wires leading from my property marker into the lake, attached to what looked like survey equipment. They were redrawing my boundary lines underwater. That's when I stopped playing defense. If they wanted a war for this land, I was going to give them one. The $5 million revenge. By the time winter came, I wasn't just fighting the HOA, I was outsmarting them. Dana and I had spent weeks building our case. Every fraudulent filing, every fake boundary, every piece of evidence of their corruption was cataloged, notarized, and locked in both physical and digital vaults. I'd even installed cameras hidden in birdhouses around my property. They caught everything, including Marjorie herself, trespassing one night with a flashlight and measuring tape. She wasn't laughing anymore. We brought the evidence to the county's legal division, and within a week, an investigation began. Turns out, the HOA's development partner, Mallory Lakeside Holdings, had funneled millions into bribing local officials to fast-track zoning changes. The fake LLC that bought my land, it was owned by Marjorie's brother. The dominoes started falling fast. The forged deed was declared void, my ownership reinstated, and every HOA member tied to the scheme faced civil fraud charges. But that wasn't enough for me. They had tried to erase me, my home, my name, my rights. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to make them pay. Dana helped me file a lawsuit, Parker versus Mallory Shores Homeowners Association. The claim? Malicious interference, fraud, property tampering, and emotional distress. It became the talk of the county. Local reporters picked it up, and within days, the HOA's reputation imploded. When the court date arrived, I walked into the courthouse in a clean suit, holding the same crumpled $5 bill I'd used to buy the shack. Marjorie tried to meet my eyes, but couldn't. The trial lasted 6 days. Every recording, photo, and maps spoke louder than any lawyer could. The jury took less than 2 hours to deliberate. Verdict: in favor of the plaintiff. The HOA was ordered to pay $2.4 million in damages, plus legal fees. The county seized several of their bank accounts, and the developer partnership was dissolved. But the best part came a month later, when a commercial broker knocked on my door. He wanted to buy the property, all 1.7 acres, for $5 million. I looked out at the lake, calm and silver under the winter sky. The same spot where I'd slept on a moldy cot, where raccoons once scurried through holes in the floor, where everyone had laughed at the idiot with the $5 shack. Now it was worth more than their entire subdivision combined. I smiled, took a deep breath, and shook the broker's hand. Then I walked to my mailbox, pulled out a letter from the new HOA president, a timid apology, and tossed it into the lake. Because some things aren't for sale. And sometimes, the best revenge is just winning.